A few days ago, I saw one of the most hallucinatory broadcasts I've ever seen in my life, and I've seen quite a few broadcasts. Mr. Tucker Carlson made an interview with Pastor Dr. Muntel Isaac, I hope I'm not getting the name wrong, to discuss the subject of Israel, of Christians in the region, and in particular how Israel, in general, as a country, as a nation, and as a matter of policy, treats Christians. Now, you would think that if this is really the subject that you're interested in, you could find online in 2 seconds any one of the thousands, if not tens of thousands, of Catholics and pretty much any denomination under the sun who actually are Israeli citizens and have been living in Israel for decades and have been running their communities in Israel for decades. Contact them, make an appointment, do an interview, and ask them. Mr. Carlson apparently found that the most credible person, absolutely the best person to give an answer, an honest and accurate and informative answer to the question as how are Christians treated in Israel, will come from the Palestinian, who is hostile to Israel, who may be voted for Hamas, we don't know, and who doesn't live in Israel and is not an Israeli citizen. But there's one particular part of the interview that I want to address. But first of all, just overall, it was amazing to me how much there was no context to anything in this interview. If you just if you don't know much about the subject and you just listen to this interview, you would have thought that the Gaza Strip and the West Bank are Christian communities. The word Muslims was not mentioned even once. The word war was barely mentioned. You couldn't. There's no context. It's just floating in air in a hallucinatory kind of way. No context to anything whatsoever. And the whole premise of the interview was that Israel is treating Christians badly. I want to address one particular example, and that is that because it just made me laugh. The pastor brought as an example East Jerusalem. And he brought a certain part of East Jerusalem where there's graffiti, anti-Christian graffiti, and people are shouting, "Get out of here, Christians! We don't want you!" And they're graffiti saying things like that, and like all this is probably true. What this pastor neglected to mention is that that's East Jerusalem. Nobody gets anywhere close to East Jerusalem. Not police, not anyone. East Jerusalem is the place where the darkest sects of the religious Orthodox, the scariest ones, that's where they reside. That's where they live. If you are a regular Israeli Jew, and you dare, which no one does, but if you dare to drive your car in the vicinity of these areas in East Jerusalem, after the Sabbath entered, like Friday after sunset, you will be stoned. Literally. These people who live over there will take stones this big and they will throw them at your car and they will smash your windshields and then they'll drag you out of the car and they will beat you to a pulp. So this is the place where Mr. Carlson and the honorable pastor decided to bring as an example as for how Israel in general, as a whole, as a nation, as a country, treats Christians. So they did that. It was very well crafted and very well engineered. They got to that part sort of towards the end of the interview, and then Tucker Carlson delivers the message to his audience wrapped in a question. You gotta hand it to him. The man is skillful in what he does. That basically Israel is a country that persecutes Christians. As a country, in general, as a matter of policy, the country persecutes Christians, which is probably the most outlandish crock of BS you can possibly say about the state of Israel. This is possibly the number one most idiotic thing you can say about any subject. Um, Again, you couldn't know that there are Muslims living in the region. You certainly couldn't know that something happened there on October 7th. You did get the impression that Israel just persecute Christians because they're Christians. Another part of really hallucinatory in size accuracy that was delivered there as information is as if Israel is 100% or like totally secular, but it limits the religious freedoms of Christians. Like Christians are somehow being sort of targeted. Israel has a terrible demographics problems with, and there's a constant threat that the religious Orthodox, that the more extreme and more radical religious Orthodox parts of Israeli community are basically taking over the country. Everybody is suffering. Jews, everybody is suffering from limitations that don't exist in other countries because of strict laws coming from certain parts of religious Orthodox parts in Israel. When it comes to marriage, when it comes to production, when it comes to the ability to keep your store open on Friday evening or to work during the weekend, when it comes to infrastructure works during the weekend so that during business weeks transportation will move, when it comes to marriage, when it comes to food production, there is just an endless list of limitations that everybody suffers from, anybody who lives in Israel. So Christians suffer the same kind of fate in that way as secular Israelis. So again, this is yet another demented, sort of distorted presentation of what Israel is like. Just one final thing. Mr. Carlson did not say persecute Christians. He said kill Jews, Christians, like a nation that that bombs churches and kills Christians, as if we're doing that on a regular basis, and there is no context of 1,400 people who were murdered at, somewhere between September and November. Just sort of, that's what Israel does. Israel, just as a nation, blows up churches and kills Christians. That's what Israel does. If you just listen to the interview, that's what you would learn from the Honorable Mr. Carlson.